Welcome to Top Advisor Marketing, where you will learn how to become a prolific online influencer, attract more ideal clients, and grow your practice. Brought to you by Top Advisor Podcasting, a done-for-you podcasting solution built just for trusted advisors. And now, your co-hosts of Top Advisor Marketing, Kirk Lowe and Matt Halloran.
Welcome to today's episode. It's episode number 25. We've got a great guest with us today, Dr. Jack Singer, and we're going to be talking today about the mental side of marketing. And yes, everybody lay down on a couch, whatever gets you excited, put your feet up. We're going to talk about some really interesting concepts today to help you have a better perspective, a better mental ability or capabilities to better in your practice. And we're going to apply it to marketing because this is a marketing show, but you'll be able to apply this to all areas of mental toughness in your practice. So welcome, Dr. Jack. That's what I call you. Can I call you that?
Oh, that's fine. It's a pleasure to be here as always.
So Dr. Jack and I have been talking for months, and I always railroad all the conversations because I want them to help my kids become better athletes. But we finally figured out how to put together a show here, and we're going to give you some really great stuff. So Dr. Jack is 30 plus years working with elite athletes, world champions, gold medal athletes, and professional athletes. And he's got a couple stories that are just going to blow your mind. I think that for regular people, we all think that these incredible athletes are so different than us. And I think Dr. Jack is going to show you with some stories that they're not. And they have to practice. The mental side of the game is so huge. And so we're going to talk about that. So Dr. Jack, back in 2008, started working with advisors, kind of shifted his focus, and he's been helping advisors ever since. One of the things that he is incredible at is speaking and working with groups within organizations. So probably a lot of our listeners are independent advisors. But if you like what Dr. Jack's going to be talking about, you've got to go up the chain of command, see if you can find somebody there to get them into your conference somehow to connect with you guys and help you. So he speaks across the country and abroad. I think he's spoken in Asia and Canada as well. And he's the author of an incredibly practical book called The Financial Advisor's Ultimate Stress Mastery Guide. And he was gracious enough to send both Matt and I a copy. And Matt is here with us, but he's being quiet today. He has handed over the keys for this particular episode, and he's watching me. He's like my mentor, sensei. So let's jump into this, Jack. I was thinking that advisors are just like athletes, and that's what you've been telling me. And they need to practice. They need to be on their game. They need to be able to face rejection. They need to be able to face competition. They need to produce. They need to be leaders. They need to be skilled. They need to stay focused, and they need to stay positive. That's a long list, but man, there's a lot of things that advisors need to be good at, just like athletes do.
Well, that's exactly correct. And, an example that I could give you that comes very apropos to what we're talking about is you started by saying Matt is going to be in the background and be my mentor today. So if in your mind, Kurt, you started worrying that without Matt participating, this is all on me, then that is one of the key issues that athletes and financial advisors have to deal with, is that little voice in their head that starts worrying about things.
You're amazing. So I've just laid down on a couch, and I can't do that because I got to stand up and talk to you. But yeah, it's exactly. I mean, it's a perfect example. And I see stuff with advisors all the time where I can tell that they're struggling with this side of the mental side of marketing or just in their practice. And I hear these 5, they're not mantras, but they kind of feel like it sometimes. I don't control my brand. So, how can I be better at marketing or, do the right things in my marketing? I just invested in a new website. It's not what I was hoping for, but it's done. So I don't want to touch it anymore. I want to grow, but how do I find the dollars to invest? I can't afford good marketing. I can only afford these little, one-off kinds of things. Compliance won't let me do marketing or marketing like I need to. Or I have no time to focus on marketing, writing, or doing social media. I just don't have time. These are things I hear all the time that I chalk up as the mental side of marketing. Any wisdom on that, Jack?
Yeah, this is really a series of examples of what advisors say to themselves in terms of rationalizing, not making any changes. People tend to be creatures of habit, as you both know, and so they tend to do the same thing over and over again, even if it's not in their best interest, because of the fear of the unknown. If I make a change, I don't know what that'll bring about, so I better stick with what I have. So when you have people making these rationalizations as excuses for not making changes, they're just continuing an old habit. Your job is to teach them that they can develop new habits that will be extremely productive for them in a very short period of time.
So we've talked about before getting on the call here, getting organized, about 3 mental breakthroughs for advisors, and you had a name for what you call that.
Well, there's all of these come under the main heading of mental toughness, which we'll get to at the end. But the imposter fear is this fear that in my heart of hearts, I don't really think that I'm capable of doing what everyone else thinks I'm capable of doing. So the heck with it, I'm going to stick with my old habits. Or the heck with it, I better get out of this profession. And believe me, in 2008, there were many advisors who were ready to jump off cliffs like lemmings. And I had to help them see that their fears and what was going on in that little voice in their head were not accurate.
Yeah, you had a fabulous story about an NFL quarterback. Could you share that with everybody?
Sure. So an NFL quarterback contacts me and says, I won almost every game in college. I only lost 1 game in 4 years. I don't believe that I should be sitting on the bench. I should be starting. So I'm talking to him about getting his emotions under control, being mentally prepared because he's only 1 injury away from playing, and that could happen anytime, unpredictably. Lo and behold, the next week, the starting quarterback breaks his leg during the game. This guy gets thrown in and probably produces the worst game in his entire life. He calls me up after the game and said, they're going to start me next week, and I think maybe I should quit the team. I said, what? Quit the team. And so all of those fears that he had buried came right to the surface. I won the games by luck. It was my teammates who won it, not me. Maybe I shouldn't be in this profession. And so that's what fear does. It brings all of these irrational thoughts into your mind. And my job was to convince him that he is a talented young football player and he can produce on the professional level in the NFL the same way that he produced when he was in college. So with an advisor, I've had plenty of examples with advisors who do the same thing. They're going to be promoted in their office, and suddenly they believe, well, maybe the CEO, has this false impression of me. I don't know if I can do what he wants me to do, and maybe I should turn down the promotion. Would be an example.
Yeah, what I hear all the time from advisors, and it's always struck me a little interesting, is that a lot of advisors that I speak with think that they're better than all the other advisors. They think that I know they talk about holistic planning, but I really know what holistic planning is, or I really understand what my client's best interest is, or I really have their more integrity and more trust. Those other guys are selling annuities, or they always make up some reason. And I've always been very curious about the mental side. Like, what is that really saying about the advisor? And you had some really interesting thoughts on that, if you could share those.
Well, it's fine if the advisor truly believes what he or she is saying, and that's part of the mental toughness that we'll talk about later. But in most cases, what you have is someone who has a foundation of insecurity, and they're trying to convince themselves that they're okay. So they go overboard to the other extreme. I'm better than the other advisors, that kind of thing. Or I know this more. Who are you convincing? The people you're talking to or yourself about this? So I always raise my antennae when people talk like that. And I say, let's talk about realistic and logical thinking about how special you are or how special you can be, as opposed to trying to convince everybody of that. Because that suggests that maybe it's quite the opposite and you're developing this imposter fear. By the way, to use a poker analogy, imposter fear is like everybody thinks you're a royal flush, but in your heart of hearts, you feel like a pair of sixes.
Halloran, you must have a comment on something like that. No?
Well, I agree. I think it's absolutely amazing where Dr. Jack is taking all of this stuff. I think, so many of us really don't understand that we are the thing that gets in our own way. And I love Dr. Jack. Thank you for bringing up the professional football player, just because that I'm not good enough, that imposter fear, that overall idea is so many of us have that, and it's nice. And actually, I'm sure you found that it's oddly reassuring to those of us who are just in the professional world that super duper high profile people feel the same way.
Everybody has that vulnerability, and it's been covered over because when you talk about athletes in particular who get to that level, they've been enabled by yes men and women, most of their lives, so they haven't had to face the real bugaboos. When they get to the NFL and everybody's as good as they are in terms of talent, all of a sudden they have to really face themselves and decide, am I going to step up to the plate here, or is this the first threat I've had in my life and I can't deal with it?
Yeah. And I'm not trying to be hard on advisors when I was talking about how when they call me, they feel like, they describe who they are and what they do as being better than most of the advisors that they know. They may, in fact, be, but that happens to everybody. It's just, part of being human. But what you want to do is if you can control this, that's what we're talking to Dr. Jack today about. If you can control and see when these things take form in your practice, in your mind, then if you can control them and do something about them, you're a step ahead of the game. And that's why athletes, and that's why business performers and advisors hire coaches and mental, to improve and enhance these areas so they can just focus on being great and always moving forward, instead of things in their mind holding them back. And I see people, advisors, being held back with the marketing mindset all the time. So great examples there. So this is the 3 mental breakthroughs for advisors. And we're talking about a champion mindset. So there's 3 parts of that. So we just went over the first one, which is imposter fear. Let's jump into the second one, Dr. Jack, and I'll let you run with this one.
Well, there's been more than 40 years of research done, not just with athletes, but with financial professionals in particular and sales teams, really across the board with hundreds of industries, on what we call the optimistic expectation style versus the pessimistic expectation. And to just boil it down to its simplest ingredient here, what we're really talking about is how does an individual deal with a setback? How do they bounce back from a setback? Pessimistic people look at setbacks as permanent. It's just another example of my weakness. I don't know how to get out of this, and it'll probably never change. As opposed to optimistic thinkers, think in terms of, okay, this is an aberration. Yeah, I made a mistake. I can learn from it. I can move on. This is temporary, and it doesn't reflect who I am. So that's a simplified version of this, but it's a very, very powerful personality behavioral trait. And the good news is that people who tend to be born with or learn to be pessimistic because one of their parents was like that can learn how to change these behaviors. That's the key. They found that with financial advisors, in terms of their sales abilities, they found that the pessimistic ones tended to be 50% less efficient than the optimistic ones, and they had a washout rate that was more than double the optimistic ones. So what did they learn from that? You can measure these traits so you can hire people who tend to be optimistic expectation people. But more important than that, you can train people to be that way. And that's what I've done with athletes and with advisors.
Just think about that, 50%. That's a huge number. If money talks, your phone's going to be ringing off the hook to help get help, because if you're not being optimistic enough, you're losing the opportunity to be more successful. It's pretty simple. It makes a lot of sense. It's nothing, I'm sure, that people haven't considered before, but there's some more reinforcement for you. So you had a really great example of an Olympic gold medal winner. Can you share that story with us? And then there's one that you talked about with an advisor as well.
Yes, there was an Olympic gold medal winner gymnast who came to see me about a year ago. And I was curious to know why she wanted to see me. She'd already won an Olympic gold medal and several world championships. And the next Olympics were coming up in about a year. And I was wondering what she needed me for. And she said, well, it's exactly the point. Can you understand the tremendous expectations that my coaches, my family, and my friends, everybody has? The expectation is that I will repeat and get another gold medal. Do you know how difficult that is? And I said, you've really opened my eyes, because you're exactly right. So here's a person who had sort of a pessimistic expectation that it's almost impossible for me to repeat this. And therefore, she started raising her anxiety level a year before the event even took place. And that's a kind of a typical example of someone who doesn't maintain the optimistic thinking pattern and needs to be refreshed and reminded. And certainly you can see the same in many advisors that I've worked with over the years who will attribute great success with certain clients to luck. People who say I was lucky are people who tend to be pessimistically oriented, that it was a fluke that this happened, that yes, I got some new high-value clients, but it wasn't because of my efforts, it's because I was in the right place at the right time. Or they would say that, I hired Kirk to do my marketing. That's the only reason that I was successful, not that I had anything to do with it. So you see how all of this ties together with changing the mindset of a person so they begin to feel more self-confident in their ability. And yes, it's not shameful to hire a mentor or a trainer or someone to do your marketing for you. That doesn't suggest weakness, it suggests strength. And these are the kinds of mindset changes we make with athletes and advisors.
Yeah, it makes me think too, when people analyze where they're headed in their practice. I mean, you've heard for so many years to be outcomes based or like have a goal, but sometimes I think process based makes more sense, and it's easier to be optimistic when you're following a process. And I'm a huge hockey fan, and I love the Maple Leafs, and Mike Babcock has been so much fun to listen to all the time because he focuses on the process, and he likes outcomes, but he says when you do the right things every day and your mind is in the right place and your heart is in the right place and your work is in the right place, everything kind of figures itself out.
This is an excellent observation, something that you and I didn't even chat about, and I'm really impressed, Kirk, because this is a key point that I give in all of my presentations, is that it's the process rather than the outcome that's the most important. If you focus on the process, as you call it, I call it the process, of what it takes to be successful as an advisor, for example, it has to do with what is my marketing plan? It has to do with, do I know how to communicate with prospective clients? It has to do with, am I genuinely interested in making sure their wealth management is the best it can be because I've done a tremendous amount of research and it's important that I be the best advisor I can be for them. This is the process. If you do that, the outcome takes care of itself. But if you're so worried about the outcome, like I didn't make my numbers this month, or what am I going to do to get more assets under management? If you're just focused on those outcomes, you lose your train of thought on the process that it takes to get there.
Okay, we're going to do another show on process versus outcome marketing or practice or something like that. We got to do another one of the shows because I think we can get into all kinds of interesting things. I mean, how I approach marketing is about trying to help advisors come up with a process that is so authentic and organic, it's easy to do. Anyway, I'm not going to go there right now. Let's move on to number 3. This is where we get some really street savvy stuff from Dr. Jack. And so number 3 is mental toughness. Can you talk about mental toughness?
Sure. Mental toughness really embraces all of the other concepts, what you're thinking, your imposter fear, your fear of failure, your resistance to change. All of that can be fixed if you become and develop a mentally tough process, if you will, in your daily life, both on and off the job. And I've had athletes, for example, tell me that before an important game, they're listening to a recording that I make for them of mental toughness techniques, and we're going to go over those today, 7 techniques that only take 5 or 6 minutes to use, that they have found it to be much more powerful than anything else that their colleagues are listening to, like music or lectures or things like that, that this little simple 7 steps to ignite mental toughness has been the key to their success. So all of your listeners get to be experiencing this right now.
Beautiful. Let's go through your 7-step program.
All right. So number 1, you need to recognize the negative trigger thoughts, these little thoughts that go on in your mind that cause you the problems, that raise your anxiety. So, for example, a financial advisor could say, I'm worried that I won't be able to keep all of my clients. That would be a trigger thought. Or if it's a marketing situation, it could be, my marketing has never worked for me, and I don't know where to start, so why even bother? Now, these are trigger thoughts that will lead to awful things happening in your mind. So the first step is recognize the trigger thought. The second step is stop the thought dead in its tracks. Now, how do we do that? I recommend that everybody wear on their wrist what's called a number 64 rubber band. In the United States, these are the rubber bands that the mail comes in. I don't know about Canada, but they're fat rubber bands. They don't fit too tightly. Just get yourself one of these rubber bands, and as soon as you recognize that there's a negative trigger thought, you snap away and stop the thought dead in its tracks, at the same time telling yourself, stop the silly thinking right here. It's like putting up a stop sign. Now, because these habits tend to be repeated, and they've been repeated for years, the thoughts may want to keep creeping in. But I promise you, if you're consistent about snapping away, not even letting the thought finish, eventually your self-conscious mind will not want to feel the pain of that snap, and it will stop the thoughts on its own. Once you've stopped the thought, step 3 is to take what we call deep centering breaths. These are breaths in through your nose to the count of 4, holding it for 4 seconds, and then a big exhale out your mouth to the count of 7. That forces you to breathe through your diaphragm, which every professional singer and musician has learned to do, and it's the most relaxing and calming kind of breathing. So a deep centering breath is the 3rd step. That will calm you down from the anxiety that was raised when you first had the thought go through your mind. The next one is very important. Everyone needs to have a performance statement, and we don't have a lot of time to go into exactly what that is, but essentially, what would give you maximum success so that you can do your best consistently? So for an advisor, a performance statement could be, every day on my way to the office, I remind myself to get smarter and wiser this day, to grow my knowledge and be able to be the best advisor I'm capable of being. Perhaps, Kurt, you can give a performance statement that would bring marketing to the fore.
Oh, you're queuing me up to steal the show here. So, and benefit for the mindset that I want advisors to have, which is I can simplify my marketing and inspire referrals without it costing me a fortune. What a great performance statement that would be.
Yes, and again, you repeat it to yourself because you really need to believe it, not just saying a bunch of words. So you just really want to believe it, that you can do that, because our subconscious minds will go in any direction we want them to. And if you keep saying something very positive like that, your mind will start to believe it. It's almost fake it till you make it. So if I say it enough times, my brain will believe it and I can go there. So that's the performance statement. Next, I have you recall what the greatest success you've had, whether it's business or otherwise. The Seattle Seahawks, in one of their important games, I don't remember if it was the Super Bowl or it was one of the playoff games, they were way behind at halftime. And they went into the locker room. They were all discouraged, and I'm sure most of them thought they couldn't win this game. And their coach said, here's all I want to do during halftime. I want each of you to come up with your greatest success. I don't care if you were a spelling champion or if you won the best of the city when you were in high school or it was a college. I want you to start raising your hands and share with us your greatest success. And these fellows got themselves so fired up by complimenting themselves on what they did that they went out in the second half and won the game. So we always want to remember our greatest success and visualize it as if it's a video going on in our minds. That's what I call a personal highlight reel. We then move to an identity statement. So this is, what is a strength that I need to have in order to be the best I can be? What objectives do I want to accomplish? An example for an advisor would be, I am the most conscientious producer in my firm. I've always had my clients' specific needs and goals at the top of my priorities, and I dig deep with each client, making sure that I understand their needs and provide them with the best products and services available anywhere in the world. So again, to cue you up, Kirk,
I've got a good one here. Yeah.
Good. Go ahead.
So here's an identity statement I would love advisors to use. I'm a leading financial professional. I add tremendous value to my client relationships, and people are inspired to refer me. I work smart, and I take time to enjoy my life, my family, and my business on my terms.
Perfect. So there you have step 6 is the identity statement. So now you've given a performance statement. What do I need to do, and who am I as a professional advisor? And the final step, the anchor to the whole thing, is another deep centering breath. So you've got this breathing going on in the beginning and at the end. All of this can be done in 5 minutes. And if you keep doing this, I'm telling you that this is a game changer, mentally and physically.
I'm going to be super honest here. when you first went through this with me, I thought to myself, shouldn't my mind be able to figure this out myself? Like, I've been around the block as an entrepreneur, and I should be able to figure this stuff out for myself. And I thought, this seems kind of simplistic. And I thought, shouldn't your mind? And then when you start really thinking about it, and the more you go through it, when bad thoughts come into our lives, our minds, it just happens. It's just part of being human. And the fact that, great athletes who have hit the highest level recognize that they have negative thoughts come in all the time. And you're thinking, oh, they got to be so mentally tough to be there. I mean, I'm blown away when I really start to think about how this could impact me with what it could do. And I'm going to apply this, and I will talk about that in a month. I'm going to start applying this 7-step program. And by the way, if you go to Dr. Jack's website, he's going to make this available. We'll give that in a couple minutes here. We're just kind of wind down. But this is an incredible opportunity to own mental toughness for yourself so you can be better in your practice. Not only can you be better in practice, you can share this kind of stuff with your kids and your family, your friends, your colleagues. It's an incredible opportunity, and I'm extremely grateful that we hooked up, that we were able to find how to get your incredible wisdom out to our audience. Dr. Jack, thank you so much.
It's been indeed my pleasure, and I'd be happy to do it again anytime.
So, maybe you can give us a little insight into how you help advisors. I started talking about it at the start of the show, but maybe you can give our listeners.
Well, I'm called on all the time to do keynote presentations. My program is called Actionable Skills to Develop the Mindset of a Champion Financial Professional. And I actually go through this in much more detail than we've had time to do today. And then the other thing I do is I go into large firms as a consultant because they have individuals issues that they want to work on, or they want to go into it again in much more detail. Like I could do 3 days on becoming an optimistic thinker, or turning linguistic toxicity, I call it, into linguistic nutrition, which is the language you use inside your head. It's going from negative to positive and pessimistic to optimistic. So I do a lot of that consulting. And then I also mentor people on the phone or via Skype who have read my book, for example, and want some help to learn how to master all of the stresses in the profession. That's the area of expertise that I bring to the table, is I've given them in that book 77 ways to master the stresses that they're dealing with every day.
Beautiful. So Dr. Jack's website is advisingtheadvisors.com. So advisingtheadvisors.com. And advisors is ORS, okay? So advisingtheadvisors.com. His book is The Financial Advisor's Ultimate Stress Mastery Guide. It is wonderfully practical. It's kind of like a workbook. And I love that when people, and I talk about this all the time on our podcast, is add value. And Dr. Jack's added a tremendous amount of value to this guide. You can reach Dr. Jack anytime. If you want to spend 15 minutes with Dr. Jack, sharing some thoughts on going from being an average advisor to an exceptional one, because that's how I look at this, right? You can dial him directly. It's 949-481-5660. And I will make the web address, the link to go buy the guide or the book, and Dr. Jack's phone number available in the show notes of this podcast. Again, it's what we talked about today is developing the champion's mindset, or the mindset of a champion, however you want to. And there are 3 ways to do that. Number 1 is look out for imposter fear when that shows up, your optimistic expectation, and develop mental toughness. And Dr. Jack has shared, when you go to his website, you can download the 7-step program to enhance mental toughness in your business and your life, really. And so those 7 steps we went through today. Thank you so much for your time.
Kurt, I just have one thing I forgot to tell you that's really important. I've just completed a 15-hour e-course on this whole subject, and we're now going to be getting continuing education credit for it. So look for that on my website soon, where people can sign up for the e-course on developing the mindset of a champion.
That's incredible. Yeah, so they can do it on their own. It's on demand, ready to go. You know what? You mentioned that to me, so my apologies for getting that from our conversation the other day. So I'll put the link to that e-course. Is it ready to go or almost?
It's not quite ready yet, and we're going to have it so that they have live calls with me as part of it. So they'll be going out several times a year where people in groups can join up maybe 30 at a time, because I will be involved in it live. So rather than taking it by themselves, they get to have me involved as part of it. But if they keep checking the website, they'll find it. And again, we're trying to get continuing education credit for it.
When you are done that program, when it's ready to go, I'm going to email everybody on Matt and I's list. And so if you're worried that you maybe haven't downloaded a paper from kirklow.com or not on Matt's or you're not connected with it on LinkedIn or something like that, go to LinkedIn and connect with either Matt or I, or go to topadvisormarketing.com, and on the right-hand side that says links, it says get notified of new podcasts. Just go fill that out. That'll make sure that you're on our list so that when this gets launched by Dr. Jack, I will send it out in an email so that everybody can get access to it, learn about it, and hopefully lots of people will go through it. Incredible wisdom. Thanks again. And we're going to have Dr. Jack back again to get into our heads and help us be more mindful of mental toughness and the value of our practices. That's it for episode 25. We'll see you on the other side of the mic.